I'm Lisa, and you're with Velo Dulce, the show where we talk women, cycling, and life. Velo Dulce is from the Italian phrase La vita dolce, which means the good life. These are stories from women around the world on finding the good life through life on a bicycle. So, my guest today is Gracie Elvin. Gracie is a two-time winner of the Australian National Road Championships and the only Australian female rider to podium at the Tour of Flanders for women. She represented Australia at the Commonwealth Games and Olympics. She left pro racing in a year ago. I want to say to pursue life outside cycling, but that isn't true at all. If anything, Gracie is more involved than ever and giving back to the sport. She's currently a writer for cycling tips and co-founded the Cyclists Alliance, an organization which fights for the rights of pro-female riders. As I've come to find out, Gracie is also something of a comedian, which is no small task given the gravity of the causes she fights for. So I am thrilled to introduce you to and welcome Gracie.
Thanks for having me. And I love that you said that I'm a comedian. I don't see myself as that, but my secret, wish list of careers when I was a kid was stand-up comedian. So I'm very flattered by that.
I love it. Well, I really loved, and I mean, we may as well just jump right into things, but I really loved how you've taken some pretty serious subjects, and although you still manage to convey the gravity of what you're talking about, you do it in a really light and comical way. And I think it's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. I guess, it's nice that that comes across. I feel like in person, I like to be like that. I can be quite a serious, somewhat stoic type personality, but I love to have a laugh as well. And it's really difficult, especially on social media and anything that's text-based to convey humor, because people just don't quite get it. So I think, if it comes across well online, then I'm happy about that.
I want to get into, it's funny, but actually before we started chatting, I thought I would title this In the Shower with Gracie. And when I saw your picture on Instagram today, I was like, no way. So to give, listeners some context, on the show, we have listeners who are cyclists and non-cyclists. So to give people some context, the Paris-Roubaix recently happened, the epic first Paris-Roubaix for women. And you wrote a whole piece on the, what do I want to call them? The iconic Paris-Roubaix showers. And you did a photo on Instagram today of standing in the shower. Just tell me your thinking behind that.
Yeah, I was really nervous but really proud of that article. I think that's probably one of the best things I've written, in my personal opinion, because it was really vulnerable. And it's really tough to point out inequalities without sounding like a whinging feminist, because it's really, there's so much that we care about, but sometimes it just comes out the wrong way, or it's interpreted the wrong way. And it's really difficult to fight for equality for females and not come across as, not negative, but just, have people just dismiss you because you're a bit arm wavy or something. And I actually wrote the key parts of that article actually more than a year ago. So last year, in the initial waves of COVID, I was back in Australia because all of the racing was cancelled, and I was riding my bike no intervals or nothing, no hard training, but just lots of hours on the bike because we were not really sure what was going to happen for the rest of the year. And I found these rides like really meditative, and I had some really great thinking time, and I've always loved to write, and I've just been doing a lot more now. I've retired, but last year when I was still a pro cyclist, I was using those few months away from racing on my bike, just thinking and often writing, and I'd stop on the side of a trail or the road because I had an idea and I had to write it down, and my notes app on my iPhone just got so full. I probably wrote tens of thousands of words in those few months because I just felt like I had this spring of mental energy because I just didn't have to go do anything else. And that was really liberating and really energizing. And one of the things I wrote was I just had this kind of feeling of, why are we always getting held at arm's reach as female athletes? And the Paris-Roubaix was supposed to be held for the first time in that spring, but as lots of listeners know, most of the races got cancelled, and it got postponed to the end of last year, and it was still cancelled, unfortunately. So I never got to race it, but I had the hope there that I would race it in that year last year. And I just was thinking of all these reasons why we hadn't done it yet, and all these reasons why personally I'd come across some misogyny in my career and in my personal life. And it all bubbled up into this emotional few lines. And the theme of it was the showers of Roubaix. And I just felt like that was such a powerful image to me. And I knew if I must think that, then other people could probably resonate with that too.
Absolutely.
And I had it stuck away in my iPhone notes until this year. And I remembered that they were still there. And I looked back and I was like, wow, that's still really relevant. I need to, piece this together and make it a piece before this race really does happen. And the reception I got from it was great. And I think people really understood what I was trying to say.
It's a really, really well written piece, and I'll actually share it in the comments when I share the podcast. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have to confess, I've been riding my bicycle for a really long time. I won't give my age away. And I honestly never realized the depth to which the sport was so divided. And Paris-Roubaix brought that to my attention, and a couple of other things that happened this year. And I have to say I felt really, really sad about it, but I also understand what you're talking about, because I didn't suddenly want to become the screaming person who is like, this is not fair. And so I get what you're saying when you want to convey the gravity of a situation, but actually come across with credibility. And I think that's exactly what you did in that article. So now let's kind of bring it all together. You've been this pro rider. You're now giving back to the sport in a greater way, I think, you than ever before. You mentioned the word retirement. I don't see that you've retired at all. From pro racing, absolutely. I think you can probably identify with it being a reinvention. Tell me, firstly, how are you? Where are you now? Have you decompressed from pro life?
Oh, I think you just made a really nice point that I don't think anyone's actually ever said to me. I actually haven't retired, and actually that means a lot. It's almost made me a bit emotional.
Aww.
I've been trying to, reinvent myself in a way, I guess, but also like, well, what is not even what my identity is. I think personal identity is separate to personal branding, and I've just been trying to think about what my personal brand is now, and it's actually taken me a ridiculous amount of time to realize my personal brand is I'm a women's cycling expert, and that therefore means that you're right, I haven't retired, and that's actually really cool. I've just got a new version of what that means, and I'm not I'm not pushing my body anymore, but I'm still heavily involved, and it's really special. And when I was a younger athlete, I kind of was in this starting of this newer generation of Aussie female cyclists, that it was around just prior to the London Olympics, and a lot of riders retired either at the Olympics prior to that or around that London Olympic time. So I actually didn't have a lot of peers that were my elders from Australian cycling, and I had a lot of peers of my generation that are still, world best, and they were awesome to learn from and come up with, but it's still different from those that had been around for a long time, who were leaving the sport, and they'd leave and they would be almost completely removed from the sport. So they weren't coaching or mentoring or de-essing or anything. And I feel I could just, even at that point in my young life, just thinking, what a waste. I empathize with them. I understand why you need to step away, and it's all very individual and very personal, but it felt like such a waste. And I almost promised myself way back then that I wouldn't do that. And I'm proud of myself this year, because I have almost more, and not almost, I definitely have more empathy for those women now, because it hurts to not race yourself. It hurts a little bit to see everyone trucking on without you, and your instinct to protect yourself emotionally goes, you should shut this off completely. Don't watch the races, don't engage, because it's too painful. But my heart was still just like, no, if you disengage, you'll never come back to it. And that's something you promised yourself you wouldn't do. And so I've tried to remain engaged in ways that still help me heal and grieve, but I haven't ever left. And the Cyclists Alliance has been a huge part of that, staying connected. And now that I'm a lot further along, like 12 months since my last race, I feel like I can watch races now without it hurting as much, except for a few outliers such as Paris-Roubaix. But in general, I think I've had to, process a lot this year, but I'm really proud of myself for staying engaged and not just stepping away, because I love cycling. I'll be a lifetime cyclist. I know that there's a lot of people that gave me so much in terms of support and mentoring over the years, and I want to pay it forward. I have so much experience and knowledge. I'm an expert in women's cycling now, and
you are.
I want to help that next generation coming through, and I'm not quite sure what that is yet, but right now it's definitely with advocacy and mentoring. So
Wow, you made me a bit emotional there. I must say, that's really profound, the ability to be present with something that hurts, that you want so much. I mean,
watching the Olympics this year, and watching Worlds and watching Nationals, and then the most painful day was the day after Roubaix for me. But
why that day?
Grieving is never linear, and you're always going to have things that pop up that you realize the blister's still there, and you need to pop it again. So it's like,
why the day after?
I really enjoyed watching the race. I think it was really amazing, and I was a bit emotional before the race, and especially around writing that article. I think sometimes I feel like writing to me is a lot like racing. I think sometimes you just show up and you do your best, and then other times you're exposing part of yourself that's extremely vulnerable. So for me, in the past, that was saying, I want to get a podium at Flanders, and saying that publicly puts that pressure on you, because you've said out loud to everyone, I care a lot about this, and I'm going to try, and I'm probably going to fail. And then writing as well is like, I'm always proud of the things that I write, but every now and again, like that Paris-Roubaix piece, it's just that you just give that little bit more of yourself, and it's a lot more vulnerable. So you have to be prepared to cop the backlash if it's not well received. And so I think like just my emotions leading into the weekend and not being there, and having written something quite open and it was probably emotional. I wasn't that emotional watching the race. And I think that part of it was actually because they didn't show the first part of the race. I think if I'd watched everyone on the start line, I probably would have stung a lot. But because they took us in halfway through the race, it was almost like someone had distracted me and pulled the Band-Aid off without me realizing.
Yes.
So, yeah. And then because it was a late night for me, I'm not actually used to having late nights. I sleep very well. So I think the next day I just had like a late night that I wasn't used to, and then the emotional come down. Right. And yeah, it just all hit me on that day after. And also just seeing the photos, you know, like
of
seeing the photos of the warfare of the mud and the cobbles and all the hype around it, and just a little bit of sadness that wasn't me. But definitely when I saw the photos of the girls in the showers, that was probably the bit that I was like, oh wow, okay, that's really happened now. But it was really good too, because it wasn't just a day of like FOMO of going, oh gosh, I should have been there. It was a day of like, well, I'm really sad that I didn't quite make it, but I'm also, this gives me an opportunity to think of all the reasons why I'm not there. And I'm still really glad that I made the decision to retire when I did, because that was what I needed to do for me. And it wasn't worth just that one more day of glory.
Sure. That takes a big person to say that, because I think all of us in one way or another go after that one more day of glory. Yeah. So just to kind of set some context for listeners who aren't that involved in cycling, Paris-Roubaix is iconic in every way. I don't think I could probably ride. I mean, I ride my bike 4 times a week. I don't think I could do like 50 Ks of it. It's on cobbles. This year's race was miserable. And more than that, the thing that listeners need to understand is that this was the first women's race. It took 100 years. Do you have my facts straight, Gracie?
Yeah. More than 100 years, but
took more than 100 years to get a women's race. And yeah, I was shocked. That it took that long, and I was shocked by the talk around the prize money, and I've just been shocked about quite a lot of things in women's cycling. I mean, listen, there's to me, I have this hill that I have to ride up every time I come home. And every time I ride up the hill, I think, why did you choose cycling? You don't want to play golf? What? Like, was there no other sport you could have chosen? Just because cycling is so hard. It's hard, and nobody pays me for it. I go out cycling and go to have coffee with my mates. But, you know, cycling, I think, is probably one of the hardest sports you could choose. So to do it and have to fight for it at the same time, I can't even imagine.
It's a completely different sport to most sports, and it's a team sport, which is really hard to explain to non-cycling fans. But just the sheer fact that, you know, say 100 to 150 riders in one race on average, and only one person can take over the win that day. So that's a completely different scenario to 2 teams playing on a pitch and one team wins out of 2. Like it's 1 out of 150. So like you don't get that many wins in your cycling life, even if you're one of the best. And there's just so much more to it. Like every course that we do is different, so it's unpredictable. You have these incredibly difficult challenges, such as Paris-Roubaix, of like these extra obstacles that you have to conquer, the cobbles and the climbs. And it's not just the winning of the race that makes you nervous. For me, sometimes I'd be standing on the start line and it wasn't even an outcome goal that was making me nervous. I wasn't thinking,
Right.
I need to win this. I was thinking, I need to be in the 10th position of the bunch at this kilometer mark, because that's when it really gets complicated and crazy. And like, this is like little things like that that make you nervous. So,
Sure.
But that's the beauty of it too, because sometimes sports are you know, it's so heavily weighted on your physical talents and aptitudes. And cycling is definitely a sport where you need a great engine, great VO2 max, and great strength, and all these important physical attributes that you're more or less born with or not, and you can improve slightly with training.
Right.
But one of the things that always appealed to me with cycling is, sure, I've got the talent, but I wasn't ever going to be the most talented out there. I wasn't a freak athlete like there were a handful of, but I have the package. I'm smart on the bike. I'm skilled. I can think on my feet, and I could win a race over people more talented than me. And that was really exciting. And like,
amazing.
You get your chance sometimes, instead of just, lining up in a pool and going, well, I know I can never get half a second on that girl. It's just not possible.
Right.
So I could, outwit and outplay some of them.
Yeah. Did you have to fight in your career? Is that so? So you co-founded the Cyclists Alliance, which is really around supporting women in the sport. What brought you to co-founding that? Did you have to fight through your career?
Look, I've had a very fortunate career, and I'm very grateful for all the good timing and good support I've had. So I've actually had very few problems in cycling compared to a lot of female cyclists. So I was in a position where I was financially stable enough to say, okay, I can do this because I'm not risking anything. I can put this time and effort into something bigger than me because I am in a good position. So I understand why some people don't want to be involved, or it's because they don't even have that mental space to even think outside of their own little bubble. And I don't resent them for that. It's just because that's the place that they're in. And I knew that I wasn't in that place. So for me, back in 2017, I was really coming into the peak of my career, and was, I knew I was capable of a lot, and I was actually starting to get paid quite well, which was quite rare for a cyclist, and even now. And my friend Iris Slappendale approached me, and we'd kind of formed this little friendship over the years, because I think we both knew, we kind of gravitated towards each other because I think we both knew that we were both politically minded in some ways, of like, oh, don't you think this race did that well, or don't you think this could be better? And I don't know why, but we just started having these conversations, and I knew she was definitely having these conversations with other people. She'd been an athlete representative in the UCI Athletes Commission, so she'd kind of already been exposed to that, and she has that social and moral responsibility that I definitely have too. So I think we were just a little bit kindred in that way. Not many people in the bunch, not many athletes are like that. I think I'm not trying to be negative, but athletes, we're quite selfish, and you're just thinking about your own career. So it only takes a couple of people to want to help everyone to make a difference. And absolutely. She was really involved, and I think she'd been thinking about this for a long time, and she realized that working within the International Cycling Federation and within the current men's cycling union wasn't quite going to work for women's cycling. Our problems are just different, and we didn't always want to be at the bottom of on the bill of every meeting, like we didn't always want to be the afterthought. We had issues that were important, and men's cycling actually has issues that we didn't want to be involved in. They were actually stuff that wasn't good in their sport, and stuff that we didn't have to deal with. So I guess there's pros and cons of not having a
Right.
lot of money in cycling, in women's cycling. But yeah, she really just realized that we needed to form an independent union that was not biased and not influenced by any other body, but only purely driven by the needs of athletes. And she approached myself and one of her ex-teammates, Carmen Small, and I was a bit reluctant at first, I won't lie. I was just like, I don't know if I've got the courage for that or the time or the energy.
Right.
And she kept pestering me, and I finally, my gut was just like, I always knew I wasn't really going to say no, but I definitely was putting the brakes on a little bit. So she did convince me, but I think she probably knew she didn't have to try too hard. And yeah, we brainstormed for a few months and pulled a great team of advisors together, and we really just didn't know what we were doing, but we bit off more than we could chew, and we had some great help, and it's only gotten better every year. So I think we're all really proud of it.
What year did you start? What year did the Cycling Alliance start?
2017.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been about 5 years now, and a steady rise in numbers since then. So we're just sitting under 200 members, which is a significant part of the
amazing
UCI peloton, which is great because it means they see
the
value in what we're doing.
Sure, of course. I want to just pause a moment on the courage to have the conversations, because I think I remember reading an interview with you, and in the interview you were saying, well, actually I'm quite an introvert, and and I think often we feel one way on the inside, and then we come across in a different way. And to me, you've come across as so brave and so courageous, and just having the ability to have the difficult conversations. And I mean, especially in your last year of racing, you were dealing with a lot. You were having difficult conversations about the ending of your marriage. You were having difficult conversations about racing. You've had, you kind of consistently step forward into the courageous arena. So for me, it's a no-brainer that you would co-found the Cyclists Alliance. And the one thing I want to pause on there is I want to ask you, what has given you the courage to have those conversations?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think, so when I was a bike racer, early on I was told, you have great race instincts and you seem to have a good feel for racing, and that was nice to hear. And sometimes I question that. I probably had a bit of imposter syndrome throughout my career of like, people think I'm good at that, but I don't know if I really am. But once I finally allowed myself to think that I am, and in team meetings, in race, before a race, if I really felt something, I really made sure I said it. And it took me many years to finally have my voice, because I'm naturally quite shy and quiet, but I finally got to a point where I trusted myself enough to be like, well, I need to say how I feel, because it might be wrong, but at least I've said it and I can learn from that. And instead of wondering, and often I think as women, you have this idea, or you want to make a remark in a meeting, or you want to say what you think, or you have the answer, and either someone puts their hand up before you and says the answer, and you go, damn it, I knew that. or someone says something else and it doesn't work, and you're like, I really wish I'd said what I thought, because in hindsight, it was the right thing. I think more often than not, we're right. And as women, we don't trust ourselves enough, because we just don't have that confidence. And it's taken me so long to work my way out of that. And I still do it a little bit, but every time I'm met with a moment of being afraid to say something out loud, really try and say it out loud and not worry if I'm going to be wrong or not, because more often than not, I'm not wrong, and it's a good idea or a good thought, or my instincts right. And it's okay to be wrong, because every now and then you are.
Right.
And, you know, the consequence of that usually isn't that big, except for a bit of a hit on your pride. So at least you can learn from that. And yeah, so I had to figure out how to apply this skill in racing, and following my instinct in a race, and even, as I said, following my instinct in those confronting team meetings sometimes, to then go, well, I really need to do this in the rest of my life. And sometimes I'm really tired, or sometimes I feel a bit down, or sometimes I have a bit of a burning feeling in my chest, which some people, could be, you know, called anxiety. And I go, instead of just being like, I feel crap and I don't know why, I just sit with that and go, well, what's my body trying to tell me? What's my instinct trying to say? And do I need to act on that? What do I need to change for that feeling to go away? And I'm not saying this from a mental health point of view. I think that's a different conversation. I'm just saying this from a
courageous conversation.
What your gut instinct is, and trusting yourself, and what's right for you, and not what's right for everyone else,
right?
Because they're often different. And I think in forming the Cyclists Alliance, I remember the day that we launched, and so we'd put all these months into making this union, and I was so nervous about it finally being launched, because Iris and Carmen had already retired, but I was still in the peloton. And I remember I'm pretty sure we were in London for one of the races, and I was thinking like, all eyes are going to be on me when I walk down to breakfast one day. And they just weren't. Like, the launch had happened, nothing had changed.
Right.
And that part of me, that nervous part of me that doesn't like the attention, was so relieved. And I realized, like, actually nobody cares. It's fine. Right. I was just worried about having my face to this almost controversial thing. But it really wasn't that controversial. It was something necessary. And once I got past that, I was like, yeah, actually, screw it. This is what we need. And no one else is doing it, so I'm doing it. But yeah, when it came to some of the harder stuff, like ending my marriage and retiring and other things, it was like, well, I think when it involves other people, it's way harder. I don't want to hurt anyone. And that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But my instincts were just so strong, and I had to listen to myself. And I hope to live a long life, and I know that if I keep following my instincts, that long life will be more joyful if I listen to myself, rather than living how other people want me to live, or how society says I should live.
Absolutely. I think that's so key. And I think this year I've realized it more than ever before. I've realized two things. One is that I used to wait to have a conversation. So like, I used to kind of say to myself, okay, when I feel better, I'll have the conversation, or when things are better, or when, totally. Always kind of postponing a conversation until a future date. That kind of never came. No. Never a good time to have a hard conversation. But the thing is, I really believe the truth does set you free. And it is that link to joy. It is that link to joy. And the other thing I learned this year is that the more you put yourself out there, the more vulnerable you feel, like the more unsafe. But at the same time, it's that same link to joy, because you feel liberated. It's like, okay, well, I'm actually doing what I believe in. And actually, when you think about it, there's no other way to live.
Totally. I've always wanted a big life, and a big life to me isn't fancy. It isn't extravagant. It's a life lived making choices.
Right.
Yeah. Meaningful choices.
Right.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
So tell me about the Cyclists Alliance. Tell me about your role. Tell me about what you guys want.
Originally, my role with the two other women, Iris and Carmen, we set up our own board. So we were kind of the executive and admin and communications and everything rolled into one. And we kind of just split duties. So at the start, I was communications director. So I would kind of liaise with press and do all the social media and try and engage with riders and a lot of media outlets. And we had really great support from the get-go with all cycling media. I think a lot of them could see the value in what we were doing, and all they wanted to do was help support that, and they've been doing so ever since. So we're very lucky there. And then since then, phased out of that, and we've got a really awesome team now. So our board is 5, and we have just as many non-board members doing a huge amount of work for us. We have a legal team and an ethics team. We just built a duty of care support framework. So that's really more of our health wing, where we've got some experts there, a doctor, a nutritionist, some riders with some great experience. And we really want to promote, women's health and performance. Obviously for the riders, for sure, we can always improve riders' education around their health and performance, so they're not jeopardizing any of that while they're still pursuing the highest level of sport. But long term, we really want to be educating the people around these riders, like the management. And Belgian and Italian teams have a pretty bad reputation for being old school and making the girls diet and do silly things. So we really want to get rid of that kind of culture in sport. But that's more of a recent development for us. So really the last few years have been helping riders in contract or legal battles. We've even dealt with some of those abuse cases that have come to light. So it's been really amazing to be able to support some riders that really have need a lot of help, because they've been in positions where they shouldn't have been in cycling. So providing the federations with the data that we have from annual surveys. We have so much great information from riders every year when we do surveys of what the landscape really is in women's cycling. So then you can really affect going forward what policy is. And that's led to some pretty significant changes, such as minimum wages at the World Tour level. Amazing. We even have maternity leave built into those World Tour contracts, which in sport is pretty awesome.
Absolutely unheard of.
Yeah. So, but for me now, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do within the Cyclists Alliance. And then the idea started to form that I would kind of help relaunch the mentor program that Carmen had started almost when we started the Cyclists Alliance. It was quite low key then. So we really wanted to, get a bit of feedback from past participants to see how we could improve the program. And myself and our treasurer and board member, Rose, and I put our heads together for a few months at the end of last year. She also retired from racing. So we were both in this feeling of, what is our identity in women's cycling now, and how would we want to give back and stay involved. And it was really fun to work with her on creating this new version of the program. And then we launched it in May this year, and we have just over 30 participants. So about 16 or 17 pairs, I believe. And we really have been managing that and getting some awesome help from some of our partners, providing very informative webinars and support for either the mentors or the mentees or both. And one of the things that has been most exciting is to have 5 usually competing rival brands, some of the leaders in women's, well, not women's, but all cycling. So we have, let me list them, Specialized, Trek, Cannondale, SRAM, and Liv. So they're all, big deal brands in cycling, and they've come together because they've seen the bigger picture in supporting this mentor program and the trend, and particularly for those riders looking towards or about to head into that transition period. and something I touched on earlier in this podcast of where do riders go after they've retired? They're kind of lost to the sport. You don't see that as much in men's sport, and definitely in men's cycling. A lot of these riders go straight into a pro team as a coach or a director or a manager, and it's kind of like this well-known career path trajectory. They know that they have that stability and safety and money. And for females, probably most females have actually already studied or had a career or are studying, so they know that they have to have something to fall back on, and they don't even consider the cycling industry as a career pathway after their athlete life. And I really thought, well, I'd love to see more women across the board in leadership positions in cycling, because obviously at a team level, having a female director or a female coach makes a huge difference to the riders, to have that someone to relate to and someone that really knows the sport. But also in some of these brands, like to have the diversity at those corporate or executive levels, and in terms of marketing or journalism, or just how the brand pivots themselves in the marketplace towards getting more women on bikes, full stop, not just women racing. So
absolutely,
they could see this bigger picture as well and wanted to come together to be part of this. So they're providing a workshop series actually next week, which is going to be the first ever major workshop series that we've done. And it'll be kind of, how to get these athletes upskilled and what brands, what their passions are, what their ethos is, what they see as key things to have as employees, and potentially getting some of these riders that are ready to transition into internships and possible jobs. So for us to be that conduit there to keep women in the cycling industry is like a big deal. And it's something that, something I'm really proud of to have been a part of, working for this year.
That's amazing. Have you, I mean, you're doing a lot, and it sounds like you've had a lot of support. Have you had any backlash to what you're doing?
No backlash, which is great. Like I said, so much of the cycling media has always been behind the Cyclists Alliance and definitely behind this mentor program. So I definitely had nerves, because to have a mentor program just for athletes is,
of course,
you want to make sure everyone has gotten something out of it so you don't really want to let them down. And then when you add this extra layer of pressure of having these big brands involved, and hopefully funneling some athletes towards them for jobs, that's like, it made me even more nervous. And I was definitely thinking, I think I've bitten off more than I can chew here, but like, no backlash yet. I think I really tried hard to set expectations for everyone of like, this is really going to be a bit of a teething period for the mentor program, and it's the first year, so we're not really quite sure what how KPIs really should be, or what the outcomes are going to be. So, but I think the brands are, pretty eyes wide open of wanting this to be a long-term project. And I really hope that it keeps continuing on in years to come, because I think it's something that's only going to keep building. So no backlash as yet, but you can't please everyone. So sure. I don't think everyone's going to be coming back to the program next year, but I think a significant part will, which is cool.
Well, Gracie, I don't think, we haven't known each other long, but I don't think you would be you if you hadn't bitten off more than you could chew. And although you said you don't know what you're doing, you're kind of going as you go along, you've achieved a huge amount. And so I think, you're 100% right in saying I'm proud of what I've accomplished. And on that note, what do you think future Gracie a year down the line would say to you now?
Oh,
it's a hard question. No pressure.
It's something that I have to keep saying to myself every day. It's just like, it's okay to just stop, and I've really tried hard to have this year since my last race as I've kind of called it my gap year, and to just rest, because I tried to be the best in the world at something for the better part of a decade, and I need a rest. That's really tiring, and it takes more than a week to get over that. Even now I'm emotionally still a bit burnt out and tired, and I know it sounds like I'm doing a lot, but I also do a lot of nothing, and that's really important to me. I didn't just get a part-time job for the sake of making money. Like I've been doing a little bit of part-time study to finish my degree because that was a bit of a priority, but everything else was like, I'm really just going to make sure I pick and choose how I use my time, and some of that time is going to go towards fun and like doing things like skiing or bushwalking that I haven't done because I was cycling so much, and other parts is that finding new opportunities. Like I've been doing a little bit of writing, as you mentioned, and doing a little bit of race commentary, but I've not committed to anything, really consistent and full time because I just needed that space mentally and physically to, collapse a bit. And that's, and just telling myself that's okay. And having lazy days is okay because I am naturally inclined to be a high achiever, and it's really, sometimes I feel down on myself because I didn't have a, insert quote, productive enough day. And I think so many of us, especially females, fall into that of feeling dissatisfied or down on yourself because you're not busy enough or you're not productive enough. And
self-worth related to doing.
Yeah. So I just, almost every day I have to just be like, it's okay, I did enough. I did what I needed to do today or this week, and I don't need to do anything more. I often need to keep taking away that word should. I should do this and I should do that. I think it's so difficult and something that you always need to keep working on and reminding yourself of. So hopefully in a year's time I can, or if I was in a year's time, I would definitely keep telling myself the same thing now of like, you'll be fine. You're on the pathway you need to be. You don't need to force it. And I guess just finding that balance between not being passive either. Like I'm still an active participant in my life. I don't want to ever be passive, but having lazy days is not being present. That's also intentional.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm going a bit off tangent here, but
no, not at all. I think it's you've highlighted a few key messages throughout the podcast, and this is one. I think it's to realize that you are not what you do, and that rest is essential.
And just like being an athlete, you need the rest days to soak up the training, and everything else is similar to that. And I guess if I had to pick two key points of advice to my past self and my future self is listen to your instinct and live intentionally.
Wow. Gracie, you are absolutely a women's cycling expert. I have to say, sure, talking to you has been emotional actually, and I just want to thank you.
I want to thank you too, Lisa. It's nice of you.
Everything you give to the sport, to people around you, to just having the courage to speak up, it's profound. Yeah,
thank you. I know that I want to live a life that I won't regret, and I'm pretty happy with that so far. So I know that I can do it now, and I think for anyone listening who's afraid of making that first step of living with your instinct is like, I promise you the feeling after the fact is worse than the fear that you have right now. If you don't do the thing that you should do.
Trust yourself. You got this. Trust yourself. Yeah,
exactly.
Thank you, Gracie. My name is Lisa, and thank you for joining me. You know what to do. Subscribe, please share with a friend. Most importantly, get on your bicycle, drag your mates, drink some coffee, and I will see you next week for another episode of Velo Dulce.